I'm telling you, most Americans, and by most Americans, I mean mostly so-called white Americans, they get upset. They get upset when they see my talks. They get all sorts of negative emotions when I talk about the dismantling of America, the decline of America, the collapse of the United States, and so forth, the downgrading, the demotion of America as a global power. They get sad. They get hopeless. They get depressed, or they get defensive, or they get despondent. And I understand why. I understand why, because it has historically been their system. They got enough benefit from that system to make them actually believe more deeply in the myths around that system. Because of course it was a myth. It's always been a myth. It's never been anything but a myth. But they believed in it. I'm telling you, most Americans, and by most Americans, I mean mostly so-called white Americans, they get upset. They get upset when they see my talks. They get all sorts of negative emotions when I talk about the dismantling of America, the decline of America, the collapse of the United States, and so forth, the downgrading, the demotion of America as a global power. They get sad. They get hopeless. They get depressed, or they get defensive, or they get despondent. And I understand why. I understand why, because it has historically been their system. They got enough benefit from that system to make them actually believe more deeply in the myths around that system. Because of course it was a myth. It's always been a myth. It's never been anything but a myth. But they believed in it. The truth is, they didn't enjoy benefits in that society because of democracy and freedom. They enjoyed benefits in that society because of mass murder. They enjoyed benefits in that society because of pillage, because of slavery and piracy and exploitation, and because of war and brutality. But they always thought that Uncle Sam was on their side, you see? They thought that they were the favorite nephew of their Uncle Sam. So when they see Uncle Sam, or when they hear me talk about Uncle Sam being amputated piece by piece, it grieves them. You understand me? So I understand why the erosion of America, or the erosion of the myth of America, I understand why that bothers them, and why they get all up in arms about it. I understand it. I understand why they get depressed. I understand why their feelings get hurt. There is no more indoctrinated people. There's no more brainwashed and no more psychologically and culturally misprogrammed people on the face of this earth than so-called white Americans. I've talked about that before. Like I say, the marauder mentality, the lack of development and so on, the lack of civilization and what have you. The overwhelming majority of them, the truth of the matter is, the overwhelming majority of them throughout history have only ever been serfs, and they're still serfs until today. And the truth of the matter is that they don't actually have a stake in that system either. They don't have a stake in the system either. The system doesn't care about them either. That's the fact. But to one extent or another, they have benefited from it, and more importantly, they identify with it, right? When the United States sends someone to the moon, they'll say, "We landed on the moon." When the U.S. attacks another country, they'll say, "We are at war. We are at war." When they talk about the American economy, they say, "Our economy," and so on. It's like a fan of a sports team or something. The fan of a sports team who imagines that he has some kind of a share in it anytime that team wins a game. You see, they identify with the American project as their project. So when that project degrades, they identify that degradation with themselves. It's personal. They take it personally. There's a sense of loss. There's a sense of disappointment. There's a sense of panic. But like I said before, what's happening in America is the onshoring of previously offshore colonization and extraction. And that's going to be applied across the board to all demographics. The neoliberal economic programs that they used to use to plunder countries all across the global south are now being applied at home, and that's going to intensify. And no one is going to be spared. You need to know that. No one is going to be spared. No one is going to have, protected hands-off status, because this is not being done for the sake of America. It's being done for the sake of a national capital. It's being done for the sake of the national owners and controllers of global financialized capital who have completely untethered themselves from any sort of nationalism. They've untethered themselves from any sort of patriotism or any sense of investment in the old obsolete priorities of the American power structure. Well, who depended on that power structure all this time? What demographic depended on the power structure? Which one relied on the backing of that power structure all this time? Who's been the priority? What demographic group has been the priority of the power structure all this time? Who's always actually had the real protected, the real privileged status in that society? That's going away. Look, when I go through my comment section, who do you think I see? Who do you think I see most often talking about, I have to get out of this country? I'm planning on moving out of this country. Who do you think is melting down? Who do you see having meltdowns on social media, in public, screaming at their phone camera, crying at their phone camera, yelling, weeping, begging for someone to come, for anyone to come and save them? Begging for someone to come and fix things, to lead them, to rescue them. Well, you obviously know who it is. You know which people are doing that. It's the same people who never built anything for themselves. It's the same people who never had to build anything for themselves. I'm not saying this as a put down. Understand, I'm not saying this as a put down. It's just another data point. This is what I'm telling you. It's another data point. I'm saying that the way that that country is going, the direction that that country is going, the skill set of the oppressed is going to have a massive advantage over the skill set of the privileged. And like I say, again, this is when you see that hunter-gatherer mentality, that marauder mentality. I have to get out of this country, you see? Let me get my passport and go somewhere else. If I'm not going to get my privileges, if I'm not going to get my comfort, if I'm not going to have my convenience catered to, then let me get out of here. Let me go elsewhere. Greener pastures, you understand? Scavengers. There's no patriotism. There's no nationalism. There's privilegism. There's get-mineism. They'll drop that country. They'll drop that country the same way that their elites are dropping that country. You know, I mentioned before that JFK quote. I've talked about it a few times. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Well, when he said country, he didn't mean you. He didn't mean African Americans. He didn't mean Latino Americans. He didn't mean Arab Americans or Asian Americans or Muslim Americans or anybody else. Country here refers to one specific demographic. Means ask not what white people can do for you, ask what you can do for white people. Yes, that's what it meant. That's what it means. Like I said, they identify with the country and they identify the country with them. And that's the only reason why they identify with the country. That's the only reason why they actually identify with the country, because the country has always meant them. So the minute it does not mean them, they're booking their flights out. They're booking their flights out of there. I told you they don't believe in anything. Listen to me. They believe in a full belly. That's what they believe in. They believe in what a wolf believes in. I'm not being racist. I'm not trying to generalize about white people. I'm not saying that they're genetically predisposed to that or something. I'm saying that their culture has let them down as human beings. Their culture, their system has betrayed them. It has betrayed them by never cultivating them, by never civilizing them properly, by teaching them that cheating and that stealing and pillaging and appropriating and exploiting, by teaching them that violence and colonization and so on, that all of these things are viable, sustainable, acceptable pursuits, and that they don't inevitably lead to where they have led, to the situation that they're in now. They were lied to, and they believed it. They were lied to. They believed that they were told that skin color is a metric of value. Skin color is a metric of superiority or inferiority. They were taught that what you do has no consequences. You understand? They were taught that predation and plunder are actually successful, sustainable life strategies. And of course, this goes back to Europe. This goes back to Europe and their whole culture. I mean, until today, you all talk about your so-called enlightenment. Enlightenment. The era in which you fully developed your absolutely most grotesque concepts of your so-called Western civilization. Literally the period when you came up with all of the theories and all of the philosophies and all of the models that fueled and that justified all of the crimes that you were committing at that time and all of your future crimes. White supremacy, racism, colonialism, imperialism, genocide, chattel slavery, wage slavery. The idea that the human being is nothing but an input for business, nothing but a resource for extraction, materialism, relativism, atheism, on and on. You call that enlightenment. You call that enlightenment until today. You brag about it. You're proud of it. When that whole period, all of the intellectual output of that period was just to manufacture rationales for being savage, for being brutal, and for being ruthless. To make all those inhuman traits and all those inhuman behaviors sound intellectual and sophisticated. Well, how did you think that was going to end? How did you think that was going to end? Where did you think that was heading? Wallahi, I tell you, any Muslim who had read the Quran could have told you that your project was doomed from the outstart. You never did anything in your history but purchase the consequences that you are facing today. And worse is forthcoming. The point is that they are unprepared. That particular demographic is unprepared for what is coming to that country. They have no coping skills. They have no community. They barely even have families. You know, when you have enjoyed unearned privilege, when you've enjoyed unearned authority, well, what do you think happens when the time comes when you have to actually earn it? You have to actually earn it now, but you never actually learned the requisite skills, the discipline, the work ethic, the wisdom, the sacrifice, and so on. Well, it's very easy to predict how that's going to turn out. It's very easy to predict how that's going to go. I said the tables are turning. The tables are turning, or more accurately, we're entering the consequences phase. I know I've talked about this before, but look at the birth rate. Subhanallah. You cannot tell me that this is not a divine a manifestation of divine justice in and of itself. Imagine a people, a whole people, a nation, committing self-genocide, self-extinction by their own logic. Think about it. They're dying out. They're dying out as a direct result of the way they think about life. Their philosophies, their theories, their paradigms, their enlightenment. Their enlightenment built a system, built a society, built an economic model, an approach to the economy, built an approach to life that makes them not want to reproduce, or else makes it, they don't want to reproduce, or they can't reproduce because it's too expensive. Their way of thinking is causing them to go extinct. Their way of thinking is causing them to go extinct. But they still think it's the right way to think. They still think it's enlightened, even while it is erasing them. Look at this madness. Tell me that's not a curse that they brought upon themselves. Tell me that's not divine justice in action. I told you, flawed input, flawed outcome. You adopted a doctrine of predation and destruction, and that doctrine is devouring you out of existence. And you still won't give it up. I'm telling you that what's happening in America right now was always going to happen. We just happen to live in the generation to experience it. We just happen to live in the time when the prayers of hundreds of millions of America's victims are being answered. And if that doesn't please you, if that doesn't make you happy, then that can only be because you are someone who is on the wrong side of those prayers. Because this is justice. It happens, this idea that I'm either on this side or on that side, aligned with this one or aligned with that one. I remember seeing a tweet one time from a socialist who was warning all of his comrades about me, saying this man is not our ally, which is true. Of course, it's true. But he had to say that to the socialists because, you know, or the leftists or what have you. They will listen to a portion of what I say or some of the positions that I articulate, and they'll automatically think that I'm an ally of the socialists or an ally of the leftists, or again, whatever faction you're talking about. This is what happens. So he wanted to warn them that no, Shahid says plenty of other things that you won't like, so don't think that he's your ally. He's not on our dogma. You know, they're always trying to identify who is and who isn't an ally. It makes you think that they're only involved in political activism to socialize, like they're only involved in political activism to find a friend group or something. Like all your political factions are just mean girls at the high school cafeteria, you know? Nobody needs to be your friend. I'm not your friend. I'm not your ally. Not yours, not theirs, not anyone's. That's not a statement of hostility, by the way. It's not a statement of hostility. It's just a statement of function. Alhamdulillah, I'm a Muslim. Alhamdulillah, I'm a Muslim. I've talked before about this concept of bearing witness, shahada, testimony, testifying. Shahada. And shahada also means martyrdom. Because in order to be a true witness, a true, pure, honest witness, you have to sacrifice yourself in your testimony. Not sacrifice your life, but yourself, your preferences, your opinions, and so forth. Like I've talked about before. What you want to be true, you sacrifice that. What you like, what you dislike, who you want to win, who you want to lose, and so forth. You take all of that and you remove it. And then you describe what you see and what you have seen as it actually is. That's what I try to do. Just talk about what actually is. So when you watch me talk about, for example, the wrongs that were done to Iran, you might think that I'm pro-Iran, but you've misread me. Or when I talk about wrongs being done to the working class in America, or in the West generally, you think that, I'm one of you. No, you misread me. Or when I talk about what's been done and what's being done, for example, to African Americans, or to any other so-called minority group in that country, members of the global majority in the West. I'm not being an advocate. I'm not being an ally. I'm being a Muslim, alhamdulillah. I'm being a Muslim and I'm being a witness. You understand? When I articulate the civilizational grievances of the global South, and some leftist or some diaspora activist thinks that they found an ally, no, they've made an error. I'm not your ally. This isn't about you and it's not about your cause. This is about what Islam requires of me. You have been wronged, for example, and that's all I said. I didn't say that you're right. I didn't say that you're noble. I didn't say that your cause is clean or that your hands are clean. And I didn't say that I'm going to choose your side in the next dispute. I said that you were wronged in this instance by this action. That's the full extent of the statement, no more, no less. Like I've said before, like with Iran again. Iran has done severe damage to the region and has done so for many years, for decades. And I'll say that. But also the military assault against them is also wrong, and I'll say that too. Both things are true. The first one doesn't give license to the second one doesn't cancel out the first one. You can hold both of those things simultaneously without contradiction because they're both factually true. And I'm not working from loyalty, you understand? I'm working from, inshallah, impartial honesty. That's the problem with most people who engage with the world, most people who engage in activism and analysis. You don't operate from a fixed standard. Everything is about who you're rooting for. And when you're rooting for someone, then the truth becomes a threat. The truth becomes secondary, at least, and it also can become a threat. Honesty becomes a threat because the truth doesn't have to align with you. You have to align with the truth. That's the way it's supposed to work. But why do you even need me to be your ally in the first place? Me or anyone else? I mean, think about it. Because if you think about it, it is extremely revealing about your relationship with the truth. Truth doesn't need allies. Truth is the truth regardless. If something wrong was done to you, then that is true regardless of whether I like you or not, whether I stand with you or not, whether I march with you or vote with you or ally with you or what have you. You understand? The wrongness of the act exists independently of my affiliation, independently of everyone's affiliation. It doesn't matter. It's not wrong because enough people agreed that it's wrong. It just is wrong by an objective standard. Not because you say so, not because I say so. And whoever cares about right and wrong will object to it on the basis of their own alignment with the truth, even if they don't have any kind of relationship with you. No relationship is needed for someone to stand up for the truth. But see, this is how you do, because you don't have a fixed, objective, non-personalized concept of the truth, a non-personalized, objective concept of morality. You don't want people to be loyal to the truth, actually. You want them to be loyal to you. You want them to be loyal to you. You want them to be loyal to your group, to your faction, to your ideology, to your dogma. And this is also, by the way, always the same mentality as the oppressor, or as the people, or as the faction, or as the ideology that has done you wrong. It's the same mentality. You understand? Just like them, you will filter out what agrees with you and what disagrees with you from my analysis, from what I say. And then you'll decide based on that whether or not I should be listened to or not, based on how much what I say aligns with you and your faction and your ideology and your dogma and so on. You understand? Like, you like or dislike what I say because you are subjective. But I say what I say because, inshallah, I am objective. See, what you are actually communicating when you need me to be on your side before you will listen to or accept my analysis is that you don't fully trust that the truth can do the work on its own. You need social reinforcement. You accept the truth when it coincides with loyalty, when it coincides with sympathy and with allyship. In other words, when the loyalty coincidentally includes honesty, but the loyalty is the main thing for you. Because in your world, that's how legitimacy is established, by the numbers, by group size, by popularity. Because you have no respect for objective truth in reality. You don't even think it exists. You have no objective moral standard. You have no objective moral framework, no moral yardstick. Nothing is right or wrong unless enough people think so. unless enough people think it's right or wrong. This is a Western epistemological problem. The West does not have a fixed standard of truth. It has competing interest groups, each with their own narrative, trying to recruit enough adherents to their side so that their version of reality achieves dominance, and then it becomes the official truth. You don't win an argument by being right. You win the argument by getting enough people, enough credible voices to sign on to your version. And so in that world, an ally is not just a friend, is not just a supporter. An ally is evidence. They're an asset. So you're in a constant search for those types of assets. This one can be an ally, that one can be an ally. It's the same mentality of resource acquisition that characterizes the totality of Western so-called civilization that gave rise to colonization in the first place. It's the same mentality. It's the same mentality. That's why you need me to be your ally. That's why you need me or anyone else to be your allies. Not for the truth, for the optics of the truth. You understand? And I refuse that role. I refuse that role completely. I've watched this dynamic destroy movement after movement after movement. Destroy thinker after thinker after thinker. The moment you start calibrating truth based on who's in the coalition, you've already lost. Because the coalition has needs. The coalition has feelings, right? The coalition has internal contradictions that they need to paper over. They need everyone to be satisfied. You need everyone to be a loyal member. So that's what you do. The factional loyalty trap. And it operates everywhere. Across left and right. Across racial and ethnic lines. Across ideological movements. The rule is always the same. You are not allowed to say the true thing if the true thing embarrasses the faction. If it goes against the agenda and the interests of the faction, then you will lose your standing, you'll lose your credibility, you'll lose your platform, you'll lose your access. The moment that you step outside the perimeter of approved positions of the faction. They can't examine the ways that they demand ideological compliance from the very communities that they claim to want to liberate. You have to be like us, you have to believe like us, otherwise we're not going to even work to liberate you. The so-called pro-resistance camp cannot interrogate the ways that they actually serve the same old colonizer agendas that they claim to oppose. You can't say it. You can't talk about it. Loyalty to the faction supersedes loyalty to the truth. And they call this solidarity. This is their version of solidarity. It's not solidarity. It's the institutionalization of dishonesty. Because real solidarity doesn't require you to lie. If your coalition cannot hold itself together except by agreeing what not to say, that's not solidarity. That's a conspiracy of convenience. You understand me? So when you have that mentality of a scavenger, scavenging for allies, when you watch Middle Nation content, you are not actually engaging sincerely with the analysis. You're evaluating my tribal membership. Whose team is he on? And if the answer isn't your team, then the analysis gets discarded. Gets discarded, not refuted, discarded. You don't argue with it. You just withdraw your endorsement and move on to someone else who's willing to say what you want. Because truth for you is instrumental. It's instrumentalized. It's just a tool that you pick up when it serves you and you put down when it doesn't serve you. It's a weapon that you will deploy against your enemies, but it's not a standard that you will hold yourself to. And when someone comes along who holds it as a standard and who will apply it regardless of who it lands on, well, that person becomes a problem. They can't be controlled. They won't stay on the script. I'm not neutral, by the way. I'm not neutral. That's all. That's another misreading. Neutrality means equidistance. It means not declaring anything right or wrong. I'll call out wrong. I will call out injustice. I will name the crime. I'm not neutral, but I am impartial. There's a difference. Impartial means that the position that you do take is not determined by who is involved, but by the facts and by the truth. And this principle will apply regardless of the players. And when the principle lands against you, even if you are the wronged party, I will still say it. The question is not whether or not I am on your side or not on your side. The question is whether your side is on the side of the truth. That's the only thing. That's how you'll know which side I'm going to be on, inshallah. When I describe injustices committed against you, against African Americans, for example, wrongs committed against working class Americans, wrongs committed against so-called minority communities in the West, against the victims of the Western system and the Western power structure, I'm not issuing those people or those demographics or those populations a certificate of innocence. You seem to think that those two things are the same thing. They're not. Victimhood is not innocence. You were wronged and you do wrong. Yes, you do. Both are true simultaneously. And they're not contradictory statements. It's a complete picture. It's the full picture. You understand? And you'll accept the first half and you'll reject the second half with precisely the same energy that your elites reject the whole thing. You have a different position in the hierarchy, but you have identical psychological reflexes. My critique of Western so-called civilization is not directed exclusively at your ruling class. No, it is not. They're not directed only at your governments and your corporations and your military apparatus. I'm talking about the whole society, the whole culture, the collective culture, including you, including the West victims who live in the West. And the moment that becomes clear to you, then you react identically to your elites. The same defensiveness, the same deflection, the same accusation that, oh brother Shahid, you used to make sense. I used to agree with you until you said that. Which tells me that the values are not the difference between you and your elites, just the power, just the access to power. I mean, let's talk about your society, your so-called civilization, what it is, what it does, what it produces. This is what you call civilization. The United States of America, the flagship of Western so-called civilization, the self-declared leader of the free world, holds approximately 2 million people in cages right now. That's 25%, or roughly 25% of the entire world's prison population in a country that is only 4% of the world's population. Those two figures sitting together tell you everything that you need to know about the distance between the rhetoric of America and the reality of America. No other country on earth, not China, not Russia, not any of the nations that you condemn in your so-called human rights reports and so forth, no other country comes even close to your numbers of incarcerated people. 20,000 people are murdered in the United States of America every year. 600,000 people are raped every year in your country. More than 80,000 people died from drug overdoses just last year alone. And that number has been climbing for 2 decades straight while your institutions debated and deliberated and held hearings and nothing was done except for the problem to get worse. 150 people die in workplace accidents every single day, every day in your country. And that's a conservative figure. You know, the United States Surgeon General declared that loneliness is a public health crisis in 2023. The Surgeon General, a formal official declaration that your society has become so atomized, so broken in its most basic social fabric that isolation has itself become a medical emergency nationwide. With all your social media, all your technology, all your social networks, all your connectivity, your WhatsApp, instant messaging, and so forth, your constant online oversharing, your parasocial relationships and what have you, well, you would think that you are absolutely flooded with people to talk to, people to relate to, and to build connections with, but roughly half of all Americans report feeling chronic, bottomless loneliness. That's why your antidepressant consumption is so extraordinary. It's off the charts. Why your suicide rate is climbing. 1 in 5 Americans experienced a diagnosed mental illness in any given year. Your children, even your children, are on medication for anxiety, for behavioral disorders, at rates that would have been considered civilizational alarm bells just a generation ago, when I was a kid. And in your public discourse, this isn't even treated as an indictment of your civilization. SubhanAllah, it's treated like a market opportunity. We need to get those kids the drugs that they need to numb them to the miserable reality of the society that we created. That's you. That's your society. I'm telling you, there isn't a single time that you all talk about morality except that it is a performance. 100% of the time it's a performance. It's a performance to cover up your rampant immorality. That's a fact. I've talked about it before many times. You pretend that you care about children. Yes, you pretend that you care about children because you know that civilized people care about children, but you don't care about kids. You don't care about kids. Your kids are in danger and you are the danger to your own children. Your Catholic Church. Your Catholic Church. Need I say more? Your Catholic Church. You know, the ones that launched the Crusades into the Muslim world with all their pious, righteous fury. That same institution that worked in parallel to colonization with their predatory missionaries and whatnot. You all know perfectly well what they've done. You know perfectly well what that Catholic Church has done. If you just look at France, for example, the Catholic Church in France. In France alone, they produced an official commission report in 2021 estimating that 330,000 victims of sexual abuse by the clergy over 7 decades were preyed upon in France alone. Similar findings in Ireland, in Germany, in the UK, in the United States, in Australia, in Poland, wherever the Catholics are. That's institutional, systematic, generational abuse of children in the flagship moral institution of Western civilization. And that institution's first instinct every time, in every place, wherever the abuse happened, without exception, was to protect itself and protect the abusers and transfer the abusers elsewhere and silence the victims. Preserve the structure. It's not an anomaly. That's the operational code of your so-called civilization, expressing itself in the domain of the most vulnerable people. I don't care if you're not Catholic. Doesn't matter if you're not Catholic. I don't care if you're atheist. That is a Western institution that exemplifies so-called Western values. I don't care if you're not Catholic. I don't care if you're Baptist, if you're Protestant, if you're atheist. You talk to me when you stop fetishizing schoolgirl uniforms. No one even stops to question that. No one even stops to interrogate that depraved instinct that you have. I told you that you're dangerous to your children. Yes, you are. Your pornography industry is one of the largest media sectors on this earth. Your pornography industry. The United States is the primary producer and the primary distributor of that filth. The normalization, the industrialization, the gamification of human degradation, built, scaled, and exported by the so-called civilization that lectures the world about human dignity, about respecting women, about women's rights. I mean, we haven't even gotten to what you export to us. I haven't even talked about what you export to the rest of us. We always talk about colonization as extraction, what you took from us. But think about what colonization exported to us. The savagery, the brutality, the violence, the genocide, the genocidal hatred, the dehumanization. We never had that until you came. That's been the West's main export to the civilized world for centuries. For centuries. King Leopold of Belgium, Christian monarch, a man decorated and a man celebrated by Western civilization. Yes, he was. And he oversaw the systematic mutilation, the systematic murder and enslavement of the population of the Congo between 1885 and 1908. The estimates of the dead range between 5 to 10 million people. Hands were cut off as proof of bullet expenditure by their troops. Populations worked to death. Villages were burned. And this isn't ancient history. This isn't ancient history. We've got pictures. You understand me? There was a statue of that man in Belgium until protesters had the good sense to tear it down in 2020. I told you, you all talk about Hitler like he was some sort of a horrific anomaly. He wasn't. The Nazis were not strange for you. You've been Nazis everywhere that you went. In fact, the fact that you single out Hitler just proves your hypocrisy. It just shows exactly what you're really about, what you're really like, because the only unique thing about Hitler is that his victims were your own kind. It wasn't about the violence, not the violence. There was nothing unique about the violence. You never objected to the violence. You objected to it being the wrong victim.
Guys, that is Professor Shahid Bolsen for you, and I know most of you love him, and I've been asking for his videos on my channel lately, and I found that and decided to make that video compilation for you. So Professor Shahid Bolsen, basically what he's saying is that he's fully aware that white people do not celebrate when a white person is pointing out the truth, when a white person is calling out his fellow white people. It is not pleasing to them, and they do not like to associate with such white people because to them it is like betrayal, and it's something that is unimaginable even, because they hate a white person for advocating for black people, for celebrating black people, for making black people feel like they have a place in this society. Now, Shahid Bolsen is one such person, and most white people do not like him because they feel like he's betraying them, because for them, their stand is usually to discriminate on black people, to make black people miserable, and to always make sure that black people are in pain. Now, for them, it is usually very wrong when a white person is talking about things like black excellence, every other good thing that a black person does. It is almost an abomination for a white person to come out and talk about it openly that they are celebrating black people. Now, what hurts them even more is when a white person is talking about black history. For example, during the Black History Month, there are many white people that, of course, come out and celebrate black history, and they have gotten past the idea that black people are useless, careless, and they have looked at black people and seen them for who they are. So they have decolonized their minds on that issue, and these white people that have not done that, they are angry because they feel like these white people that are supposed to be their brothers and sisters are betraying them. For example, Professor Shahid Bolsen, most of them do not like him because he stands for his word and he speaks his mind. If he has seen black people doing the right thing, he will point it out and he will say it out proudly. And that is really upsetting to most of them. And the other thing that hurts them really much is the fact that they do not have anything in white history to discuss. They do not have anything to celebrate. When you're talking about the history of white people, we are talking about them hurting other people, hurting, in genocides, hurting people by eating them, frustrating them. Look at, for example, slavery. That is not something that you want to remember your ancestors for. You do not want to remember your forefathers for the ills that they have done. You do not even want anyone to mention that or to talk about it at all. Now that is what hurts them, because for black people, they have things to celebrate about their own the people that came before them. They have their ancestors who did outrage, they did well in that society that was very discriminatory on them. They did extremely well and overwhelmingly well. So that keeps upsetting the white people because they do not have anything to remember their people for. And if they do, it is usually the wrong side of things. It is usually the murders, the killings, the frustrations, the terrible decisions, the making other people to lose their lives, in painful ways. Their people do not have anything good worth remembering. So anytime black people come out to celebrate either black excellence, for example, or Black History Month, it is upsetting to them because they want to have that. They want to be the ones that are celebrating things. They always want to be the ones that have the good things, but unfortunately for them, their history sells them out. They do not have anything to celebrate. If they had, trust me, they would be doing that right now. They would be doing it at least every month. Yeah, you know who they are and you know how they behave around. So that keeps upsetting them, and black people have made it clear every other time that they do not care. Black people don't care what they're thinking. They do not care what white people feel about them celebrating the history. They are fully aware that they are not happy about it at all. But black people keep saying, you know what, we're not doing it for you, we're not doing it to impress you, we're not doing anything to make you pleased. Yeah, we're not begging you to be on our side. If that is what is going to make us divided, then so be it, because after all, there's a lot of things that they have done that are wrong, but black people are just quiet on it and they're like, let's get past it, but we will not allow them to do that same thing again to us. Now, guys, that is what is basically happening in the video, and I hope that you have enjoyed it. I know you have thoughts on these. You have your your comments on what you have watched and you'd like to share with us. Kindly consider doing that in the comment section. Let us know what you think about Shahid Bolsen and what he says. If you agree to what he has said in this video, kindly make a point to do that. Let us know in the comment section. If you also disagree with what he's saying, you're free to share your opinion, and it's a free space. We can always have that discussion where you air your thoughts, you air your, we talk about our differences, what you thought was not said right, and what you think is the right way to do things or to approach this matter of racism. And yeah, basically that is it for you guys. And if you've not subscribed to my channel, if you're watching me for the first time, if you've never been to this channel before, I'm kindly asking you to subscribe to my channel, share this video, like, leave a comment, give it a super thanks, everything that you can on the below section. So returning subscribers, I always I'm glad seeing you here. I love you so much, and I hope that you're keeping safe. So guys, I think I'll see you on my next video. So be okay, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye for now.